We found the playground deep in the woods by accident, a relic of an era long gone. The four of us, Mia, Jake, Sam, and I, were exploring the dense forest behind our neighborhood, chasing a rumor of an old, abandoned structure hidden within. The rumor had been part of local lore for years, but no one had actually seen it, at least not anyone we knew. The first time we stumbled upon it, the air was thick with an eerie stillness, broken only by the occasional rustle of leaves. It looked as though it hadn't been touched in decades. The swings hung motionless, their chains rusted and creaky. A slide, its metal surface mottled with patches of rust, sloped down into a bed of leaves. The merry-go-round sat lopsided, partially swallowed by the earth. But what stood out most was the silence. It was as if the forest itself was holding its breath. We were drawn to it, a sense of curiosity mixed with an undercurrent of dread. Mia was the first to break the silence, stepping forward and touching one of the swings. She looked back at us with a nervous smile. "See? It's just an old playground. Nothing creepy about it." Jake snorted. "Yeah, it's probably just old and forgotten. Let's check it out." We spent hours there, playing on the decrepit equipment, laughing and daring each other to climb the rusted monkey bars. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows through the trees, we decided it was time to head back. But as we turned to leave, something stopped us in our tracks, a whisper, faint and distant, like the echo of children laughing. We exchanged uneasy glances, but no one mentioned it as we hurried home. The next day, we couldn't resist the pull of the playground. We returned, the four of us feeling an unspoken bond formed by our shared experience. But this time, something was different. The swings that had been still the day before were now swaying gently, though there was no breeze. The merry-go-round creaked softly as it turned, empty and slow. Sam was the first to voice what we were all thinking. Did someone come here last night?" "Who would?" Mia replied, her voice shaking slightly. "Nobody even knows this place exists." We decided to leave, the atmosphere too unsettling to ignore. As we walked away, the whispers started again, louder this time, clearer. They were children's voices, but distorted, as if they were coming from a long-forgotten dream. We quickened our pace, not daring to look back. Over the following days, the playground invaded our thoughts. We couldn't concentrate at school, couldn't sleep at night. The whispers seemed to follow us, creeping into our dreams, turning them into twisted nightmares. We would hear the faint sound of laughter when no one else was around, see shadows moving out of the corner of our eyes. Jake suggested we visit one last time, to put our fears to rest. We agreed reluctantly, hoping to find a rational explanation. This time, as we approached, the whispers began before we even reached the clearing. The swings were now moving violently, the merry-go-round spinning faster than seemed possible. And the slide was stained dark, as if something had seeped into the metal. A chill ran down my spine as I noticed something new. At the edge of the playground, half buried in the dirt, were small, worn shoes, scattered as if dropped in a hurry. Mia picked one up, her face pale. These are kids' shoes." "Let's get out of here," Sam said, his voice trembling. "This place isn't right." As we turned to leave, the whispers grew louder, almost desperate. The swings clanged against their frames, and the merry-go-round spun wildly. Suddenly, we felt a pull, as if invisible hands were trying to drag us back. We ran, hearts pounding, the whispers chasing us all the way home. That night, the dreams were worse than ever. We saw children, their faces pale and eyes hollow, trapped in the playground, reaching out to us, begging for help. They had been there for so long, they said, lost and forgotten. Their whispers filled our minds, a cacophony of sorrow and despair. We never went back to the playground, but it never left us. The whispers, the dreams, the feeling of being watched, they became a part of our lives, a constant reminder of what we had found. And every time the wind rustles the leaves or the swings creak in an empty park, we hear them again. The children who vanished long ago, calling out from the silent playground, forever trapped in their eternal playtime. It was a scorching summer afternoon when we first stumbled upon the enchanted forest. Our small town of Riverwood had always been surrounded by familiar woods, but this forest was new. Overgrown trees with thick vines stretched towards the sky, their dark green leaves forming a dense canopy that blocked out the sun. It was as if the forest had sprung up overnight, unnoticed by anyone until now. We were a group of 5. Me, Jake, Lily, Sarah, and Max. We were all around 12 years old, eager for adventure and anything that could break the monotony of summer break. The forest seemed like the perfect place to explore, a mysterious addition to our otherwise boring surroundings. As we ventured deeper, the air grew cooler and the light dimmer. The sounds of chirping birds and rustling leaves faded, replaced by an eerie silence. We laughed it off, trying to shake off the growing unease that settled over us like a heavy blanket. "Did you hear that?" Sarah whispered, her eyes wide with fear. We all stopped, straining to listen. There was a faint whispering, like the forest was speaking in a language we couldn't understand. The trees seemed to close in around us, their branches reaching out like skeletal fingers. "Let's go back," Lily suggested, her voice trembling. But curiosity got the better of us. We pressed on, driven by the thrill of the unknown. The deeper we went, the more twisted and sinister the forest became. The path we'd been following disappeared, replaced by thick underbrush that seemed to tangle around our ankles, making it difficult to move. That's when we saw them, ghostly figures of children, their faces pale and eyes hollow. They stood among the trees, watching us with expressions of sorrow and warning. "Leave now," one of them whispered, "before it's too late." Jake, always the brave one, stepped forward. "Who are you?" The ghostly children didn't answer. Instead, they pointed deeper into the forest, their fingers trembling. "It feeds on your fear," they said in unison, their voices echoing through the trees. "It wants you to stay." A chill ran down my spine. We turned to leave, but the forest had changed. The path we had taken was gone, replaced by a labyrinth of trees and vines. Panic set in as we realized we were trapped. "We need to stick together," Max said, trying to keep calm. "We can find a way out." We moved quickly, the forest seeming to shift and reshape around us. Every direction we turned looked the same twisted trees and dark shadows. Our fear grew with every step, feeding the malevolent presence that lurked within the forest. Lily started to cry, her sobs echoing eerily. "We'll never get out," she wailed. "Yes, we will," I said, trying to sound confident. "We just have to stay calm." But calm was impossible. The forest seemed alive, its branches wrapping around us, tugging at our clothes and whispering in our ears. The ghostly children appeared again, their faces more desperate. "You have to face it," they said. "The entity feeds on fear. Confront it, and you might escape." Gathering every ounce of courage, we pressed on, following the direction the ghostly children pointed. The air grew colder, and the whispering louder. Finally, we reached a clearing. In the center stood a massive tree, its bark black and twisted, its branches reaching out like claws. It was there, waiting for us. A shadowy figure, its eyes glowing with a malevolent light. The air around it seemed to pulse with evil. "You cannot leave," it hissed, its voice like nails on a chalkboard. "Your fear is mine." I stepped forward, my heart pounding. "We're not afraid of you," I shouted, my voice shaking. "We want to leave." The entity laughed, a chilling sound that made my blood run cold. But as we stood our ground, something strange happened. The forest began to shift, the branches retracting and the path reappearing. "Keep going," Sarah urged. "We're doing it." Step by step, we moved towards the path, the entity's grip on us weakening. It howled in rage, but it couldn't hold us. With a final burst of energy, we broke free, running towards the light filtering through the trees. We emerged from the forest, gasping for breath, the sunlight warm and reassuring on our faces. The forest behind us was silent, the malevolent presence gone. The ghostly children had disappeared, their warning heeded. We never spoke of the enchanted forest again, but we all knew one thing. It was alive, feeding on fear, and we had narrowly escaped becoming its permanent residents. Riverwood returned to its sleepy routine, but we would always remember the forest that wasn't there before and the terror it held within. It was a gray afternoon when we found the bus. School had just let out, and the sky hung heavy with dark clouds. We were all a bit restless, looking for something to do. That's when Timmy spotted it, an old, rusty school bus parked behind the school, hidden by tall, unkempt grass. "Let's check it out," Timmy shouted, his curiosity contagious. The rest of us, 5 in total, followed him. The bus was ancient, with paint peeling off and windows covered in grime. It looked like it hadn't been touched in years, but the door creaked open as if inviting us in. "Creepy," Sarah whispered, but she climbed aboard anyway. The rest of us followed, a mix of excitement and unease brewing in our stomachs. Inside, the air was stale and cold. Dust danced in the slivers of light filtering through the dirty windows. The seats were torn, and cobwebs clung to every corner. But the strangest thing was the silence. It felt like the world outside had disappeared. We took our seats, giggling nervously. That's when the bus roared to life. The engine coughed and sputtered, and the doors slammed shut. We all jumped, looking around in panic. "Who started the bus?" Jake asked, his voice trembling. No one answered. Instead, we felt the bus lurch forward. It moved slowly at first, then picked up speed. Outside the windows, the scenery blurred, twisting and warping into something unrecognizable. When the bus finally stopped, we found ourselves in a ghostly version of our town. The colors were drained, everything tinged with a sickly green hue. The streets were empty, and the buildings seemed to lean in ominously. "What is this place?" Emily whispered, her voice barely audible. Suddenly, a shadowy figure appeared at the front of the bus. It was the driver, but he wasn't like any driver we'd ever seen. His eyes glowed a menacing red, and his form seemed to shift and waver as if made of smoke. "Welcome, children," he rasped, his voice echoing unnaturally. "You've crossed into my realm, and here, you must play my game if you wish to return." We didn't wait to hear more. We bolted for the doors, but they wouldn't budge. Panic set in, and we turned to the driver, but he was gone. The bus was empty again, but the oppressive silence remained. "We need to get out of here," Timmy said, his bravado slipping away. "But how?" We decided to leave the bus and explore this twisted version of our town. As we stepped off, a chill ran down our spines. The air was thick with dread, and every shadow seemed to move. The residents of this town weren't normal either. They looked like us, but their eyes were hollow, and their smiles too wide, too forced. They watched us, whispering among themselves. "We need to find something that can help us," Jake said, trying to keep calm. As we wandered, we found strange symbols painted on the walls and cryptic messages that hinted at a way out. "Follow the light," one said. "Beware the driver," warned another. Hours passed, and the sky grew darker. We were exhausted, fear gnawing at our sanity. Then, in the distance, we saw it, a flickering light. We ran towards it, hoping it was our way out. The light led us to a small park. In the center was a fountain, glowing with an ethereal light. But as we approached, the driver appeared again, his eyes burning brighter than ever. "Did you think you could escape?" he hissed. We backed away, but Timmy stepped forward. "You said we could play your game. We followed the light. Let us go." The driver sneered but then nodded slowly. "Very well, but there's always a price." Before we could react, the ground beneath us shifted. The world spun, and we were back on the bus, the normal bus, in our normal town. The doors were open, and the sky was no longer dark. We stumbled out, gasping for air, but something felt wrong. The bus door slammed shut behind us, and when we turned, it was gone, vanished without a trace. We were back, but things were different. The town seemed off, and so did we. A lingering unease followed us everywhere, a reminder of the driver's final words. Sometimes, when the wind howls just right, we can still hear the bus's engine, waiting for the next group of curious children. And we know, deep down, that we never truly escaped.